Have you ever wondered where the problems in the world today would exist if we had deeper connection to ourselves, others, and the environment and acted from that place? Welcome to the Conscious Action Podcast with your host, Brian Berneman, who believe that connection is the key to taking conscious action as individuals and creating a better world. We are here to raise awareness and inspire meaningful action by sharing stories, knowledge, and conversations with thought leaders and change makers. From sustainability to well-being and everything related to conscious living, our mission is to empower you to be the change that you want to see in the world.
Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Conscious Action Podcast. I am Brian Berneman, your host, and I have the pleasure to be joined all the way from San Francisco in the US by Crystal Cassidy. Crystal, such a pleasure to reconnect and to be able to chat more, this time recorded so that this is beneficial for everyone that is watching and listening to us. And for that, I would love it if you can share a little bit about your journey. What brought you to this moment in your life?
Happy to be here, Brian. Thank you. And yeah, last time we chatted, we had quite a bit to talk about. So it's nice to hit record and get into it today. So a little bit about me. I really think of myself in kind of two main areas that I've worked to integrate. One of them is the science side. So I studied biochemistry in school. I worked in toxicology, pharmaceutical research, ultimately oncology, cancer research, and in genomic diagnostics. So blood tests for solid tumors and developing those. One of the first ones, or the first one to come to market. So I have a deeply analytical side, for sure. And I love to understand things. I love the analytical mind. But then I also have the spiritual kind of background. And I started meditating when I was 12. I was exposed to meditation when I was 12 because I studied Goju-Ryu martial arts for about a decade and was very hardcore into it and traveled the world for it. And it was very much my life and my family. And part of that training was not just physical mastery, but mental mastery was considered just as important. And of course, when I was 12, I was like, I don't understand why we're doing this. But later on, I realized what a gift I was given. And I started meditating every day, not just on and off. And I've been doing that for about 11 years now. And as I got deeper into those experiences through meditation, I started having what you could call mystical experiences. So what you could also call Kundalini awakening. I started to perceive disembodied consciousness, entities, went through that whole realm, extraterrestrial contact, and ultimately, in the last year and a half, I've started channeling, which I never really expected for myself. So that evolution is deeply fascinating to me. And when I had a near-death experience in 2020, it really kind of wiped the slate clean, and I broke away from the biotech world, which I was so familiar with, and started to build structures for awakening, which I call SoulPod, and that's our app and our ecosystem for awakening. And that's what I work in now, and I also am writing science fiction. So that's me in a nutshell.
It's beautiful. You know, I love people that have so many different interests and allow themselves to be so multidisciplinary and polymath, and like just allowing ourselves to have a breadth of experience and skills and interests, because I have the same, and it's I always find it fascinating when I meet other people like this, that we have sometimes this bridge that we can be for different people. It's the more scientific minded or the more logical minded people with the more spiritually mystical minded people, or heart people, or whatever we want to call that, soul people, and how we can actually engage with all of that at the same time. And of course, like it's a journey for each of us, how we come to that realization and how we integrate it. But it is possible. It's one of the things that I keep on saying to a lot of my students at uni and a lot of my clients is, like we can live this life in which we are super connected to whatever it is that we are connected, and how, like be able to go to work and understand the game here and understand how does this work? Can I do something about this? Is there more like understanding that we can have, or we don't have perhaps the technology yet to realize that, but it is something that potentially it's measurable. So yeah, I always love having, like conversations and moments of connecting with people like you. So yeah, it's awesome.
Likewise. And I mean, I think you point to something that like culturally we're not really supported by, which is that dimensional aspect of self, and that maybe we're going in one direction for a certain period of time, and it can be difficult to then kind of explore another area and be open to another way of experiencing and knowing and learning. So yeah, I appreciate that about you as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to talk a little bit more about some of the things that you mentioned just now in your path, because some people I know that are watching us or are listening to us and are familiar with some of these things that you mentioned. But you mentioned, let's start. You mentioned one thing, the Kundalini, like awakening. I've talked about it in the podcast a couple of times, but yeah, I'd love for you to share what was that experience like for you, so that people can get an understanding of what you mean by that.
Yeah, and I know it's a kind of loaded word, but Kundalini, my favorite kind of understanding of it is Kunda meaning coil, and Lini, one way to relate to that, the root meaning is line. And so you can think of it as coils potential energy. So it's this potential energy that is latent within all of us. It's latent for a reason, which after it awakens, you kind of understand why. It just doesn't activate when you're not quite ready for it, even though in some people you have a spontaneous activation of it, but you're likely ready for it on some level you might not be conscious of. But it's really the way I think of it now, having experienced it, is that it's a protective mechanism more so than anything. So like a dam or a damper at the very base of your central channel, which is your spinal channel. And that spinal channel is your core energetic system. This is the chakra system, many other names for it in different traditions. And it's really this interface between the physical and the non-physical elements of self. And when that dam loosens or opens, there's already energy moving in your central channel. What happens is more energy can start to enter the central channel. And it's a multidimensional experience. So it's physical, it's obviously energetic, and consciousness-based, metaphysical. So for me, I had already been meditating for quite a while. I think this was 2015 when this happened. And I was probably 20 minutes into a pretty standard meditation for me, doing some breath work. And I started to feel this kind of activation in the pelvis. And I knew enough at that point. I was like, okay, don't judge it. Try not to judge it. Just go with it. And it built and it built and it built. And then I could feel it starting to move up my spine, but kind of pausing. And I had this experience of oneness, which so many spiritual traditions talk about. But it's one thing to believe that everything's connected. But this is, I think the definition of awakening is when you move from belief to knowing and you experience it directly for yourself. And so I was experiencing it. I was feeling that connection, that like the love that we all long for was all of a sudden very tangible and accessible. And it's like this remembrance of that connection. And I remember, I was in it for quite a while. and I was sitting at my apartment window looking out on the street below, just noticing, feeling, being in connection with all of the people, all of the roads, the trees, like everything. You could feel it, you could perceive it. And so, of course, after that happened, I was like, what the heck was that? Like, I'd heard of Kundalini, but I hadn't really, at that time, I didn't really know too much about it. I had practiced, some Kriya before, but I went deep. I was very curious, tried to find the teachers, the people, and then I kept on getting pointed in this direction of Kundalini yoga. And ultimately, I called an ashram up, which I'm still to this day amazed at my brazenness. But I called up an ashram and I asked to speak to a monk. And believe it or not, they got a monk on the phone for me. And I had a conversation with them. And it just changed my life. And I don't know who that person was. But I never talked to them again. But what they told me was that now you know why we do what we do. Like this, it's for this reason. And the other thing they cleared up for me that I thought was really useful was when it first enters and activates at the very bottom of your central channel, it can feel sexual in nature. And that can really throw people off. And they clarified for me, they're like, it's not sexual energy, it's just energy. And when it first activates, it's bleeding, it's so much energy in an area of your body that it's not used to. Those nerves in and around that center start to get overexcited. And that was so useful for me because I was like, oh, and then mine moved slowly over years. So it would move up to my second center, my third center, my heart center. Every time it started to move, I had a whole new experience and knew that my life was probably going to change in response. But they were totally right. When it came up to my power center, what happened? I got nauseous because that area was just getting bombarded by energy. So that's a Kundalini awakening in a nutshell. And ultimately, when it reaches the top centers, it's a I think orgasm of mind is the best way to explain it, but it's the jumping off the cliff moment. You have to give things up, I discovered. The power center was very much, for me at least, a confrontation. Do you really want this? Is this something that you're willing to do in this lifetime? Because it will change everything, and you kind of have to be open to that.
Yeah, beautiful explanation. Thank you for that. And I think that one of the things that I love about what you just shared is that direct experience that
Yeah.
We are now, especially at a time where information is everywhere. We have access so easily to information, and most of the time, I say to people, yes, great. We can listen to a podcast like this. We can read a book. We can watch a documentary. They might be catalysts for a change in us. And at the same time, we need to actually go and experience things, whether that is through sitting meditation, through movement practice, through whichever way or methodology we do that. We need to actually go through that direct experience because, as you mentioned really well, it's not the same that actual knowing that it's, I remember one of my teachers, I lived for a few years in California in a Tibetan Buddhist retreat center, and one time my teacher was saying that in the Buddhist path, one of the stages is the stages of seeing. And he said it's not so much seeing as experiencing. And he said, once you experience something, there's no way back. Like once you experience that oneness, there's no way back. You know that is there. Now, you might not connect to that all of the time afterwards, and it might be challenging to reconnect to that, yet you know. And that knowing can inform so much of then how we show up in life and what we decide. As you said, it's like you had moments that like, okay, change of direction. I'm not longer doing this for work, and I'm going to like redirect to another place. And just every single time I feel like there's things that we realize or we remember more than anything, we actually figured out, okay, this thing that I've been doing or how I've been doing this now needs to change. And the fact that we have that capacity to choose that change, I think that it's amazing.
I agree with all you just said, that it really does open up your capacity for change because you're rewiring your relationship to the unknown. And you're like, oh, this is actually this is interesting, this unknown. This is intriguing, but it's definitely, not to say that it's not daunting at times when you're opening up those arenas of consciousness that you haven't explored before. But that's why it's such a practice, right? Because you have that expansion, that experience, you come back kind of, you fall back into the humanness and the forgetting, and it's this dance between the two. And the cool thing I think is that you start to be able to more consciously move between those states so that when you are in your human, you're aware of that at a different level. And then you're like, okay, now I'm going to expand and experience. That's very powerful.
And I think that as well, like one of the things with this is, at least for me, and I know that it has been true, that there's, as perhaps as you had this conversation with that monk, a lot of times when we are connected or surrounded by people that are experiencing or that have experienced some of these things, makes all of that process so much easier. Like I know for me, being around my teachers and my mentors have made a lot of things so much easier, as well as helped me accelerate that process. But just knowing, it's like, it's not the same for me growing up in Argentina and like around the people that I was. And it's like, well, nobody knows anything of this. It's like, I don't have context. I don't have any, like anyone that can say like, like when this happens, look at it like this, or try to, see what happens if you try this other thing. But when we have that, not only teachers and mentors, but peers, our tribe, our like that space that we can find, it makes the journey so much easier.
Oh yeah. When that community aspect is so important because if you don't have that, it's just that much more challenging because you don't have the monk or the teacher, like you're saying, to say, yeah, maybe this is not unexpected. This is actually quite a part of the process. And so that's another reason with SoulPod, I wanted to have a community component because for me, as evidenced by my calling the ashram, I didn't have that community. I didn't have elders to go to explain what was happening. So it was very isolating, and I was so curious. I was like, where do I go? Like what community do I need to join? That's into this because it was so fascinating to me.
And have you had, and I know because I've had this, but you started, and you mentioned before that you started having this more multidimensional connection and, like, and being able to channel. Did you also have someone or other people that were able to also support you through that, or did you have to go through that by yourself?
It's so true, and it's cliche because it's true that when you're ready, the teacher appears. So I've been lucky to find the right teacher that I needed at the right times, and I'm very, as you can probably already tell, I like going into a lot of different areas, and so I've studied with very Vedic centered teachers for meditation. I've studied with a Guru Singh in the Kundalini Kriya space, deeply impactful. And Paramahansa Yogananda's teachings were also, those found me, and I studied that for a number of years. And that really, I would say, Yogananda's teachings really helped lay the foundation for me to build from there in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, I started to kind of find my teachers at the right time, and really took like a student perspective on it and to this day, I just consider myself like a forever student, because this process is infinite and always expanding. There's always more. You never get it done, So you awaken and there's more, and you transcend this dimension and there's more. So, it really kind of releases the ego from thinking that I got to check this box and then I'm done. It's just, that's not the way this works. And that's a beautiful thing. It's a liberating thing. And so, yeah, I've just been really, really lucky to have that. But I searched for it. I was very intentional about it. I was like, okay, I need a teacher in this area for these reasons. I'm ready to go deep into it. So yeah, that was important to me.
And like last time when we were chatting, you were mentioning that you started channeling the, if I'm not mistaken, the Blue Collective. That's the name
Yeah.
that. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
What was that experience like for you when you started channeling other beings? Because I know, like for a lot of people, it's like, what's happening here?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, oh my gosh, so much to say there. And honestly did not see it coming. It was not something that different from the other things, right? I knew I wanted to learn about meditation more deeply. I found the teacher. I knew I wanted to learn about Kundalini and Kriya more deeply. I found the teacher. But channeling was very different. It came to me. And it started, as fantastical as it sounds, it started in meditation. And I started to have these experiences in what you could call the astral body. And I started going to caves. There was this cave, and there was an initiation process that I didn't realize I was in until I came out of it. And I was shown how to open this particular channel of communication, which shouldn't be too, I mean, if you're really into this work, you start to realize that we're interdimensional beings. So it's not that big of a stretch that something like this is possible. And then I took note of it. I wrote it down in my journal, and I kind of forgot about it. And then maybe a few weeks later, I had, in this room that I'm in right now, one of those beings or a representation of their energy or consciousness materialized in my living room. I was in between meetings, sitting on the couch behind me, and this light being materialized. And it was such an intense energy that it's like my body knew I had to go into meditation in order to be present with it. And so I went into meditation, and then I was like, wait, what's happening? And I'd open my eyes, and there it was in front of me. And my cat was also there, and he was locked in on this and like winking at it, like cats do when they recognize or feel safe. For some reason, that was very important, because I knew two things. I knew, one, I'm not imagining this. And two, it's not threatening. And so I spent about 20 minutes with this really intense energy. And they showed me again, this is how it works. This is available because of the work of consciousness that you've done. And there's free will here. This is an offering. But once it's open, it's open. And when you access it, we always answer. And I stayed in that conversation until I started to come up out of my body, and I started to panic a little bit. And I was like, I don't know if I can handle this energy anymore. And immediately they backed off and left. And I haven't had that type of encounter since. But what I did do is take it a lot more seriously. and so now I can bring them into a conversation. I talk with them all the time. And they're just really loving, powerful, multidimensional beings that are really here in a mentorship type of capacity as others had done for them at certain points in their development.
So cool. It's like I always love because there's this thing that, as you're saying, we are multidimensional, interdimensional beings, and
Yeah.
like, I mean, everybody can believe whatever they believe. Like, I know from direct experience, just as you, that we're not alone. Um, and I've had this connection with what I call every single time. Like, I have my entourage that I'm always everywhere with.
Yeah.
And then there's these other beings that a lot of times when whether I'm working or meditating or doing things, like I can, like invite them to be there. And I think that as you're saying, again, that direct experience that you had
Yeah.
your cat as I love cats because of that. It's like they are so attuned to the subtleties of the energy, and they can actually sense all of these different beings. But I've had so many times through the years, either clients or other people telling me like, "Hey, was there?" And I'm like, "Yes, yes." Like they came and they did this, and I find it fascinating because, as you're saying, like they are here to support. They are here as
Yeah.
like benevolent energies and beings to bring gifts and an acceleration of the trajectory that we're going in our consciousness level as a civilization, as a planet Earth, to support us to, as you're saying, to the things that they have already perhaps experienced or they understand from a different perspective. And I think that for me is a lot of times one of the keys with this is just like it's another perspective that, as a non-physical being, they can bring something different and a different way of seeing things. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. Now, how do I take this into consideration? Because I am a physical being. I am experiencing, this physicality as well as other dimensions. How can I, allow this interdimensional, multidimensional experience to be there at the same time from different perspectives and different dimensions? And I think that's one of the fascinating things about life, that we actually have the capacity to do that.
Yeah. I mean, how cool is that? I mean, I think it's like the most underrated thing about being human is the fact that you're not just human, and you have access to this vast intelligence, and there's just so much to be discovered, both about ourselves as individuals, as a collective, and about the reality. And I'm also, I don't necessarily, I used to, but I don't necessarily think we're meant to like understand the whole picture from this incarnation in the human form. I used to think like maybe we can get to that point where we understand it all. And I think the multidimensional accessibility gets you closer. But it's really ultimately about experience and growth and learning and remembering, as you mentioned before. It truly is a remembering, because you're already home in those other dimensions, and this is the vacation or the trip or the kind of temporary experience of a sliver of who it is that you are. And so realizing that and remembering that and exploring that is pretty awesome.
Yeah, and I think that, like at least for me, a lot of times with this, it's the understand that there's mystery in in
Yeah.
in life, in consciousness, in reality. Like I can try to understand the nature of reality, and like and practice and connect with a lot of different things. There's always going to be a mystery. Like there's so many times that I'm working, and like I'm like, and something happened. I'm like, I have no idea how that happened, but it happened.
Yeah.
and I trust.
Yeah.
I think that I
Yeah.
think that this is one of the things after for me, like after 25 years of practicing, I have so much trust in experience and energies that I'm okay with not knowing. Like so many
Yeah.
times I'm doing like circles and we are like working on someone's patterns or energies to heal, and all of this, I get like channeling as well, like like I tell people, okay, like come in here, like you're going to be this, you're going to be this, like doing a lot of family constellations, ancestral
Oh,
healing,
yeah.
and then I'm like, I have no idea how that happened. I just know that it happened,
Yeah.
and that it was the like when we talk about it afterwards, it's that was the right experience, and
Yeah.
I'm okay not knowing. I'm okay with that mystery. I'm okay with the fact that like there's a part that my mind is not going to understand, and I'm okay with that. Whereas, as you said, like
Mm.
in the past, I wanted to understand. I wanted to
Yeah.
know.
Exactly. I wanted to, yeah, knowing this like desire, and the channel talks a lot about this difference between knowing and understanding, which we've talked a bit about. And I realized how much I was oriented to understanding, which is a very linear, limited type of intelligence. There's the knowing intelligence, which is just direct. It doesn't take time to integrate. It's just all there, all at once. And the mystery component, the ego really doesn't like that. It's like the ego wants to remain in some sort of hierarchy. In order to do that, it needs to put itself as either understanding or not understanding, of being of value, not being of value, of superior, inferior. And so it's a challenge for the ego to say, well, there's always going to be some degree of mystery, because if we live in an infinite experience, which I perceive that we do, then there has to be mystery, because then infinity couldn't exist. So it makes as much sense as that could, I think, when you think about the nature of infinity, that the unknown is a part of that.
Mm, yes, definitely. And I'd love to know, like, Crystal, if has there been for you or for other people as you're connecting with the Blue Collective, have there been some nuggets of wisdom or something that you said like, oh, those things were like really really interesting and opened my eyes or my experience
Mm.
to something, or has it been more of a general like, oh, this is interesting but nothing like that you can pinpoint?
I'm still learning, speaking of mystery. And it's very personal. So a lot they can, and I can feel it, which I can't necessarily perceive like right now. I can perceive some energy, but when I'm in the channeled state, I can very much sense the energetic makeup of the person that they're connecting in with. But they're not overstepping free will. And I can sense, and they are very direct about what that particular person may need to consider in order to open themselves up. And so I've noticed that they are very impactful in that one-on-one type of work. And then in groups, they can pick up on the dynamic of the reason why that group is there. There's always some sort of connected reason. And I would say, like, the biggest thing that I get from them so far, I mean, some specifics, like I asked them about quantum entanglement, like, what is that? Because I'm curious. And they said very simply, but if you really think about it, it's our awareness, or us becoming aware of the phenomena where there is no here or there. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. There is no here or there. That's why we have this seemingly instantaneous relationship between particles, no matter how far apart they are. So, there's little things like that. And then the higher level elements of they are also connected to other more physical intelligences, like extraterrestrials, that are in the process of opening up that realm of communication between us and other galactic universal species. And so they are working with them as well. The Palladians are very much a part of that. Other beings that we don't even have a name for, they really don't like the names because it's very limited. And they are in collaboration with them, which I found really interesting. So they are non-physical, but they're also in relationship with other partially non-physical, fully physical beings. Mm-hmm. And what their specialty is with civilizations that are experiencing rapid change, but more specifically are at that precipice where they're realizing their own interdimensionality. So that's where they're really focused with us, is okay, how do you realize this interdimensional capacity of the self? And how can we support you in taking those next steps to step even further into that truth, that experience? And so that seems to be their specific focus.
Cool. And as you're saying, we are going through these rapid changes in a lot of different ways. It's like I keep on seeing in the last 5 years, especially, like the amount of people that are awakening, and perhaps not in the Kundalini and the awakening experience, but just awakening to the fact that, okay, the way that we've been approaching life doesn't work, and the systems don't work, and there's a lot of things that are happening with AI, just political things, and so much that yes, we're going through a huge acceleration of changes, and I think that is something that, of course, the more that we are supported, it's just like with everything else that we've been talking, when we are supported to go through changes and to understand, the easier it is to actually go through it.
Yeah. And they were very clear, like they had been supported as well during some of those moments in their own evolution. And they have been very active during, it's all happening now, but very active during other points in our timeline, in ancient Egypt, in Greece specifically. And so this relationship it's not just me, and it's not new. And they're also, I think, very interested in helping people realize they can all have these conversations, that it's nothing necessarily special about me, other than I dedicated time to, just like with anything, to developing a certain capacity, that everybody can develop that capacity. It's not, I believe we're all special. And when you're all special, then that means everybody has this capacity, right? Unique and special. So they're pretty passionate about that too, I can tell.
It's so interesting, because I was going to just say we're all special, and as well we all have uniqueness, and and you just said that, so it's like, oh, damn.
It's happening.
I'd love to ask you, Crystal, like you mentioned that with the SoulPod, you wanted to create a community, you wanted to share some of this. Can you share a little bit for everyone that is like watching, like what's a SoulPod, like how can they engage with it as well?
Yeah, I think of it it's for those that are ready to do some of this deeper work, that have that seeker that's been activated in them. And there were a few things I was passionate about with SoulPod, which was personalization. So understanding where you're at in your spiritual journey, as well as we can. And also trusting that people are ready for that depth, and not really holding any secrets back, of just giving you everything that I know in this journey-based structure. And what I found, at least, is that a lot of meditation, while a great foundation, great first step, was really sanitized of this mystical component, this nonlinear component. And I wanted to bring that back in, as that's okay. And yes, we can use science. I mean, I'm a scientist. I love science. And we can use it where it's helpful and where it makes sense, but also start to develop other senses. Where science, as we understand it today, is limited to the ability to perceive from certain perspectives and not others. So bringing that all together, and then the community base, we have our pods, and so that those are other people that are closest to where you're at in your journey. So you can connect with them, you can see them, you can ask questions. If you have a really wild meditation, you can drop us a question and people can respond and I can respond. And so that was really the idea with SoulPod, and really making it a beautiful place. I mean, I love the design component. For me personally is really fun, and we're doing a lot of work on it this year that we're excited about.
Cool. And I think that, it's as you're saying, for me, like I work from a space here that where I see my clients, that it's called the Life Center, and it's a multidimensional healing space. And a lot of people come and are open to a lot of these things. And then there's people, that I work with, whether that's more corporate work or university, that I know that, okay, like I'm slowly hinting to these other things that are out there, but I'm going to, like talk more about mindfulness, and let's practice, like simple practices that might open that connection for some people. But I love that I get to play as well, in a sense, with a lot of people that are super open and come, and they know, like, okay, like we're going to channel, we're going to work with energy, we're going to, like invite all of these different experiences, and the fact that there's, like enough people with that, at least for me, makes it so beautiful. And lately we've been trying to do more of this, as you were saying, the importance of that community of shared experiences, because it's so important. And a lot of times for a lot of people, this has been a very individual journey, and like quite siloed from everyone else, and it's okay to have that as well. Like I've had this for many times as well, like that is just me. But it's when it's connected, when it's in community, when it's a shared experience, when I can, as you're saying, share my experience or my understandings with others and support them through that, and others can do the same, just even if they are in a similar stage in their understanding, or further and like expanded or long on their journey. That's so beneficial.
I think so, because because our culture has been so focused on individualization. And I mean, that's, I think, not the one, but one of the things religion really offers is that community around the spiritual exploration. And if you're not religious, which I'm not, that community is kind of challenging, right? And we used to, back in the day, have that time around the fire where we would share experiences and explore together and question things and talk about things together. And oftentimes, and I'm sure you certainly experience this too, when somebody shares something that opens the doors for others to be like, oh, you know what? I had something similar. And we start to realize how similar we are rather than different, and what unifies our experiences rather than separates. And that process is just, I think we need more of that these days.
Yeah, and like I do a lot of times encourage and invite people when I'm doing sessions, especially online, to share. To share, because as you just said, like someone sharing their own experience can be so beneficial for someone else to know, like either that's possible, or I had something similar.
Totally.
and it's not just me guiding, facilitating the space, sharing my experience. It's a something that can have such a beneficial aspect for everybody else, and that's why I always encourage people to share. Like if they are not ready at the moment, all good. Like be with your own experience, knowing that whatever our experience is valid and can be beneficial for someone else to hear it. I often think this is really really important, and this is something that I talk about this a lot with my partner, telling her, like, I don't talk with everyone as what we're doing now. Like, I don't talk about all of these different things just because I know that not everybody's ready or open at this moment for that. But it's not something that I'm hiding. Like this is like I've had this, like not only in my personal life, but even on this podcast, like I've talking about, like other beings, the Arcturians, the Pleiadians and other beings. And I'm like, if someone is not open to that, all cool. Like, but I'm not going to hide those aspects just because someone might not be open to that. And at the same time, I understand, okay, like with these people, I might not talk about that just because they are in a different, like, brainwave or state or whatever, and it's just different understanding, and that's all good. I can, like be flexible and understand. Okay, who am I talking to, and can I share this one thing to see like how they receive it, and then I'm like, okay, like let's expand from there, or okay, no, like let's close that and let's continue.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes. Dipping the toes in and seeing, okay, where are we at here? What can we connect around? And I don't think there's, I was talking with one of my teachers one time, and there's lots of opinions about in the spiritual community, like what's the right way to do certain things, the right way to meditate or yoga, or and he really, honoring where you're at is being absolutely perfect and okay. Even if you're not open to it, like that's okay. There's no rush in any of this. There is a lot of opportunity right now, but it's up to you and what you want to do with that. And I loved what he said, which was that even the simplest practices, the most watered down yoga or whatever it is, as long as it's not doing any harm, that those are all valid starting points. Because how are we to judge what may open up for somebody, the whatever it ends up being? And so, and this was in the context of some teachers debating, what was the right way to do certain things. And I just really appreciated that from him, as far as permission of like, what if that practice that's being shared is something that opens up in somebody else that needed it that way? How can we judge? And that really stuck with me, not only in my own process of like, I'm right where I need to be. There's nowhere else to be. And it's more so about intention and curiosity, and what are you excited by and what are you curious about, and following that, rather than I should be doing 2 hours of meditation every day. Not necessarily, but it's also, something I'm very passionate about, and I think opens up a lot of doors, but it's to each their own journey. There's no right way to do it.
Yeah. I've been fortunate as well to be, shown something similar, that there's no one way that is the way. There's no like the right way. It's
a slippery slope when people try and make it like that. Yeah.
And the interesting thing with that is, and I tell this a lot of times to people, each time that I found something, I was like, I can understand, because I found one thing and I'm like, everybody, like,
oh yeah,
you need to know about this, and everybody should be doing this. And then I found something else. I'm like, and then one day I remembered, and I was like, wait, I already found like 5, 6 different things that's the thing. So it's not,
Yeah.
and I like, it's one of the reasons why I resonated so much with my Tibetan Buddhist teacher, because he was so open. He
Yeah.
said everything is about experimentation. Everything is
Yes.
about, like curiosity. And like, I remember him saying, even in the Buddhist teachings, Buddha said and I don't know if this is just a big number or an actual number, but he said there's 84,000 different ways of reaching enlightenment. There's 84,000 different
Mm,
paths, as if saying there's no one path. There's so many.
mm,
Like a lot of times with numbers and how they've been translated through the years, I always realize, well, this is kind of like at that moment, 84,000 was kind of like like like
crazy
infinite.
number.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
infinite.
Yeah.
So, but that for me, it's so important. And what you just mentioned as
Mm,
well about this honoring where you are. That doesn't mean that
yeah.
we need to stay where we are. That just
Right.
means honoring that, yes, this is where I am. Because guess
Mm,
what? This is where I am. And if I don't
yeah.
honor where I am, then I'm creating extra friction or tension where that's unnecessary for
Hmm.
continuing whichever direction then I decide to go. So, yeah, I love that. And Crystal, I'm aware of our time, so I want to honor that as well. So, just last couple of things that I wanted to ask you before we wrap up. One thing is, and perhaps you have mentioned already something on this, but if you were able to talk to everyone in the world, what would be the thing that you wish everybody knew?
Good question. That you have a technology within you that's inherent to who it is you are, that is powerful beyond measure and not limited to this physical body. And to realize that for yourself is to realize how powerful and perfect and lovable and worthy that you are. And I wish for everyone to realize that about themselves, because I think that changes everything.
Yes, that's a really game changer. Beautiful, beautifully said. And lastly, Crystal, for anybody that is resonating with you, what you have been sharing, where can they find you? Where can they engage more with you and what you're
Mm.
bringing in the world?
Yeah, you can find SoulPod on the iOS App Store. We're working on Android. We should have that out hopefully in the next few months. You can find us on Instagram, SoulPod app, and TikTok. Substack is where I write my kind of thoughts about where we're at and philosophy and whatnot. And I do open up my books every now and then to do individual channeling. And if you're in San Francisco, we have some events coming up in the Bay Area in September, if you want to check that out.
Awesome. Cool. I'll put some of those links in the show notes so that it's easy access for everybody. But thank you, Crystal, for your time and for reconnecting once more. It's been
Thank you,
a
Brian.
really, really beautiful conversation. Everybody that you have been listening and watching to us up until now, hopefully, what did you hear? What did resonate with you? Share on the comments whatever it is that you are, that you find this conversation something, whether your own experience that we've been sharing before. It's important to share our experience. What has been your experience with some of these things that we have been exploring? What did you hear? Perhaps you have some questions for us. If you're resonating with Crystal and what she's doing, go and check out the SoulPod. And hopefully get some benefit from that. So yeah. Thanks so much, Crystal, and thanks
Thank you,
everybody.
Brian.
I'll see you next time. Bye.
What did you like the most about this episode? Take a moment to think about what change you can make in your life today.
Share your conscious action on social media using #ConsciousAction and tagging @ConsciousActionNZ so we can celebrate your impact on the world and create a ripple effect.
One easy action we would love for you to take right now is to share, like, and subscribe to this podcast. This will help us get these messages out into the world and inspire more people to take conscious action in their own lives, contributing to the better world we hope for.